Okay, so this is my third time trying to do this. The first two times I tried to pre-record, the audio didn't work both times. I'm hoping that this works because if not, I'm just gonna maybe throw in a towel and just maybe write it down or something. Anyway, tonight, for the third time trying, I want to speak about the dark night of the soul. Okay, the dark night of the soul, and my experience with going through the dark night of the soul. Um, um, First, I guess I should define what it means. So, I think it is a new age term, and I'm not subscribing to new age teachings per se, but um, the term really accurately describes what I went through. And I liken it to, trying to translate from one language to another, um, a term or a concept. And sometimes it's just really hard to translate the term into another language. And uh, the closest thing I found as far as Christian terms is spiritual dehydration. So, the dark night of soul, um, what I came up with, because I was just kind of looking for, Googling like, okay, what is this called? What I was going through. So, I came up with some of the symptoms of the dark night of soul are extreme sadness with no explanations why you're sad, uncontrollable crying, a feeling of emptiness, loss of motivations and activities you once enjoyed, a loss of appetite or need to binge eat, insomnia, sleeping too much, and no desire for sex. Now, some might just call that depression, but um, it it was more of a kind of like a spiritual experience. Depression did not really describe very well what I was going through. Um, and so, when I was really just kind of searching for what this was, it was Dark Night of Soul. Um, so the other term I came up with, actually, I didn't find this. A friend of mine found this, and um, I was trying to find like a Christian term for this was spiritual dehydration. And a friend of mine named Tia Kate had found this devotion on crosswalk.com, and it was called Five Signs of Spiritual Dehydration. And the key verse was John 7:37. And it says, let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. So the five signs was the use of bad language, lack of service, easily angered, lack of self-control, and unwise decisions. That was like the closest thing that, as far as a Christian term to describe the dark night of soul, but didn't quite capture it the way um, 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 that other term captured it better as far as what I felt as though I was going through. So let's go back to 2017, right? So 2017 was just like a turning point for me. It was a very, very, very bad. It was a bad year for me. It got to a point where I wasn't sure how much further I can go. And I remember two instances very well. So the first was I kind of felt like I felt very alone in 2017. And I remember one of the things I used to like to do, and if you see in my posts, I love being by the water. And one of the things I did was I used to like to drive to the Riverwinds of West Stafford and sit by the Delaware River and just, commune with nature there. And I remember it was this one day where I just felt really, really alone, like nobody understood. And I was really sad. And I remember leaving my phone at home, driving to the Riverwinds, and sitting by the Delaware River. And I remember pulling up there, and it just everything kind of went black until like maybe 5 hours later. And I realized 5 hours later I had fell asleep in my car. I had was just mentally and emotionally exhausted at that point. And I had fell asleep in my car, and I woke up a little later, and 5 hours go past, and I believe this was like the tail end of winter, maybe like February, March. I can't exactly remember the dates, but it was a little chilly. And so I remember going back home after, falling asleep in my car and getting my phone and like, okay, nobody had called me in that point. Nobody had texted me at that point. Nobody was looking for me at that point. Um, Not to get into too many details, but it was 2017. So those who know me should know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, man, nobody was even looking for me, right? And so um um the next incident I remember very clearly was June 10th, 2017. And if you go to my Facebook page, this is what I posted. It says Danielle Lewis is feeling depressed. Then it says the post was, I feel so alone and I have no one to turn to. That's what I posted June 10th, 2017. And there were 40 comments. And after I posted, the phone started ringing and I started getting text messages. And I remember not responding. And that was a Saturday. And I think that was a Saturday night. And I remember the next day, Sunday morning, I didn't go to church that day. Long story short, I don't want to get into too many details, but my situation was not getting better at that point. And I remember going to the hospital and staying there that day. And when I went to the hospital, they put me in a room. And I remember when I got there, I was angry and I was like in a rage and I was yelling and screaming. And I just was not myself. That was not my character. That was not who I was. That's not who I am. But I had turned into just this real angry and bitter woman. And I remember being there, and after a while, I remember falling asleep, and I think I was asleep for like maybe 6 hours, 7, 8 hours, something like that. And I remember waking up, and they were like, "Okay, you're depressed, and you just need it's nothing that you need to be admitted for. You're not, incompetent. You're just depressed, and you need to go." Talk to a counselor, get some therapy. And that's exactly what I did. And I had to really start making changes in my life at that point. And I'm only just kind of sharing this because a lot of times people come to me and say, "Oh, yeah, you're always doing this and you're always doing that and you're always doing this event, that event. You're all over the place doing stuff." And I'm like, this is social media. Like this like, don't read too much into that. Like, it's fun, yes, but it's just a pinch of, what, can go on in the day to day of my life or anybody else's life for that matter. So those two incidences, the main thing I remember was being exhausted, physically and emotionally spent, and spending a significant amount of time just resting. And so that made me think of an account in the Old Testament book of First Kings, chapter 19. And it's this section from verses 1 through 9 where Elijah runs away from Ahab and Jezebel. And my daddy's a preacher, my auntie's a preacher, my grandfather was a preacher, all in the AME church. My grandfather was presiding elder in the 16th district. I will not call myself that. I will say that I was raised by ministers, and my mother was like really knew her Bible verses, and she taught Sunday school for many years, and I had learned under them how to read the word for myself and just apply it and be to my life and be practical with it. So this is no formal training, but it brought me to that passage where let's go to verses 5 and 6 of 1 Kings 19. So it says, then he lay down in the shade and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel woke him up and said, get up and eat. Elijah looked around, and by his head was a jar of water and some big bread. He sat up, ate, and drank, then laid down, went back to sleep. Then in verse 7 says, soon the Lord's angel woke him again and said, get up and eat, or else you'll get too tired to travel. 8, so Elijah sat up and ate and drank. We'll go all the way to verse 9. The food and water made him strong enough to walk 40 more days. At last he reached Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, and he spent the night there in a cave. So, to give it some context, before we get to Elijah running away, maybe I need to talk to you about what happened with Elijah. So Elijah was a prophet, and a lot of times from what I've read, and I don't have any formal training, but from what I read, a lot of times prophets, they tell people the truth and not necessarily what they want to hear. So so that's what I've read. He was telling them the truth, King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, and not what they wanted to hear. And so Ahab was the king of Israel, and he was weak, and he married this foreign woman named Jezebel, and she introduced idolatry into the kingdom, and her idol god was Baal, and she had her false prophets of Baal. And long story short, Elijah and the false prophets of Baal had this contest, and Elijah won, and Queen Jezebel was not happy about it, and she basically threatened to kill him. And at this point, he was running away because, he was scared. And so he fell asleep. I guess this is first 4b. Finally, he came to a large bush and sat down in shade. He begged, Lord, I've had enough. Just let me die. I'm better off. I'm no better off than my ancestors. Then he lay down in the shade and fell asleep. And my experience with like kind of like running away from my house and going to the river and sitting down falling asleep, I kind of think that's not been what where Elijah's mind was at in this story. And the main thing the main parallels I see is like this falling asleep and this you know this emotional and this physical exhaustion to the point where you have to rest to renew yourself so that you can kind of gather up the strength to move on. And I remember June 10th, 2017, it was kind of like I didn't feel as though I could really go on any longer, because the situation had just gotten so bad and I was just losing so much stuff and I was losing like material things. And be honest with you, after that turning point, after that day, it was kind of like I realized I had to start making different choices and decisions, and wiser decisions for myself. And that I really couldn't depend on other people to understand, or care to understand what I was going through at the time, but because that just had not been their experience. And I'm not sure everybody goes through this dark night of the soul, or if it's just like certain key people. But I realized at that point I had to start making different choices and decisions for myself, and not based off of what my mama wanted, what my daddy wanted, what my sister wanted, what my friends wanted, what my spouse wanted. It was just like I had to make decisions on, okay, what is best for me and my spiritual journey, because getting myself together would be beneficial for everybody around me. And actually it turned out it has been. And so I think the very first decision I made at that point was I was going back home to the AME church. And I think well, I would say for like 9 years, and there's nothing against this denomination. I loved my time there. But for 9 years, I was United Methodist, and I really, really did love my time there. But it was like, at that point, it was time to go back home. It was time to go back. It was like, Amy Church was like family, and it was time to be around family. And it was like, I was just in a situation. And again, nothing against the UMC. I love the UMC denomination. I'll say that. I love being United Methodist, but it was just like I just did not. I needed to be around family, church family. Like I needed to be home at that point. And then I had to start making other decisions for myself as well. I had to make changes in my life, and that would benefit myself, but also would benefit everybody else around me. So, I had to give up where I was living and live somewhere more affordable, and drive a more affordable car and things like that. But I basically had to stand up for myself and stand up on my own 2 feet and take care of myself. And realize that you just have to I'm just kind of rambling because this is my third time doing this, and I had it so well. I had it so good the first time. I knocked it out like in 20 minutes and got all the points through. But realizing that the dark night of the soul spiritual dehydration. A crisis of faith is a turning point. It's a crossroads, right? And it's like you can make a choice that you want to live or you want to die. You want to, follow the way, the truth, and the life of Jesus Christ, or you want to go over to the dark side, right? And the dark night of the soul is kind of like God isolating you and getting you by yourself so he can get your attention. It's like, I need you to, follow me and like believe in this word and trust this word and to follow this word, right? And that was my experience with it. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is just kind of sharing my experience with it so that, it can encourage someone who may be in a very low point in their life that it can get better. But your life may not look the same moving forward. And there may be some things, material things that you may have to give up, but the peace, the spiritual peace and the spiritual love and the spiritual blessings that come along with going the straight and narrow way is nothing compared to any material loss, right? We got to build our hopes on things eternal and things that are last. Like, the spiritual is what's going to last. Your spirit will always be here. Like your body will pass away. Your stuff will break down and have to be replaced. You can replace the car, you can replace your house, you can replace your computer, you can replace your phone, but your sound mind, that's the most important, because God's not giving us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. And I believe that's 2 Timothy 1:7. I think I got that right. But your sound mind is what's more important. And going back to that whole language piece, I had studied French for many years, and if you were to read that scripture in French, it basically says that that word sound mind would be literally translated to mastery of yourself. Mastery of yourself. That's what you literally would translate that word sound mind, if you is mastery of yourself. And once you have mastery of yourself and self-control and discipline, and what direction you are going and where God is leading you, all those other things will, you can replace and you can get it back. But number one thing is having this peace and having a sound mind. And I think I'll end it there. I'm at about 23 minutes. Again, this is my third time trying to do this. So I hope this is a blessing to anybody who gets a chance to watch this. And I may do this from time to time, kind of like a podcast type of thing. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good night.